So, hello everyone again, and welcome to the story of 101 to 107 South Broadway. So our story takes place at the empty lot underneath the Mandalorian mural at the corner of South Broadway and South Broadway and Bayard. The story surrounding the significance of this lot humbled me, at times brought me to tears, and shocked me. This is a difficult story to tell, and I hope to do it justice, but I hope by the end you'll see what a special lot this is. So let's begin. There were buildings on this site prior, but for this presentation, I really wanted to focus only on the specific building that sat on this lot beginning in the 1920s until its demolition. And it started with John Rubright. He was born in 1874 in Illinois, and he was a Spanish-American War veteran and served in the Philippines. John and his family moved around quite a bit, but they seemed to like Lincoln Street and lived in a couple different locations. He was also president of the South Denver Civic Association for a number of years, which met at Hyde Hall at 75 Broadway. The association was similar to the role of what registered neighborhood organizations do today. In the late 1920s, the organization was looking at some initiatives to pave South Broadway from Exposition south to the city limits, as well as add ornamental lighting to the streets and gates at the Gates Rubber Factory. He had started out as an auto salesman in the 1920s during the height of the automobile craze, which made cars more affordable for working class families. He must have made a killing because then he laid out his plans to build the Royal Market. In May of 1920, John was issued a permit for construction of the building at the corner of Bayard and South Broadway. His goal was to open the building on October 23, 1920. There was a Royal Market building downtown, and it was successful, so he wanted to bring this concept of micro grocery stalls down to South Broadway. He began advertising for the rental space in local newspapers. The Royal Market was a great success. There are no known photos, but we do have advertisements to see what kind of stores were there. In 1923, a Piggly Wiggly opened within store number 32 in the Royal Market. But they had lots of variety shops, from electrical appliance shops, a barber, meat market, the Royal Market butter shops, a coal cellar, feed store. And they also had a bicycle shop and a photo studio, which was advertising 18 girls needed for a Hollywood movie. There was a Royal Bakery, a tool agency, and even a rifle club, and a shooting range in the basement. John Rubright's passion was coffee, so even though he owned the store, he also worked daily at his Royal Market coffee shop. Although we don't have any photos, we get a sense of the size of the different spaces and uses that they had imagined for the building in their advertisements. They tout that the building is fireproof, and it's next to the new South Denver post office. It has a basement, and they were looking for new tenants such as a grocery store, candy shop, bowling alley, pool tables, or a roller skating rink. The finest room, they said, was an 89 by 184-foot room. And this market was a one-stop entertainment shop. And honestly, I really wish they could bring something like this back to Broadway because I think it could be really successful. In 1927, even Safeway bought a space at the market, and they operated there for about 3 years before moving to its permanent location a little further south on Broadway, where it currently is today. And between 1925, John escaped Denver and decided to open and operate the Alpine Inn in Boulder Canyon. This structure is actually now considered significant, and it's becoming a focus of major restoration effort. John died in 1949 after retiring. And then the Royal Market's longtime business manager, Ray Meacham, took over the operations of the market once John passed away. He ran it for about 10 years, and in 1859, Ray sold the building. In 1950s, Gamble's came in and took a large portion of the store, but they lost their lease in 1952. In 1953, the People's Furniture took over 19,000 square foot and operated it as the sole business until 1965. I like that we kind of see a little sketch here of what the building looked like. In 1967, Norm Handler purchased the building. Now, remember this information for later. About a year later, the People's Furniture went bankrupt. People's Furniture store received somewhat of an angel investor who purchased the entire inventory and started to try to sell it under the new People's Furniture name. Eventually, they replaced the name as People's Furniture Gallery. This only lasted another 5 years until creditors required liquidation of their entire inventory and the store closed. But this paved the way for the next chapter of the Royal Market. So now the real story begins. Tom Mills was a Western Slope native who had a generous heart, impeccable taste, and an inexhaustible zest for life. He was a demanding perfectionist and entrepreneur. In the hedonistic 1970s of Boulder, he built the 507, across from what is now the Justice Center. Bar 507 was an iconic gay establishment at the time, and they scraped together $2,000 to open up that business. When Tom was just 24 years old, he said that one night he had dreamed about a place like the ballpark. It was a fantasy he kept in his mind for years. In 1976, Tom moved to Denver in the then cheap and shabby Baker neighborhood. It was a perfect locale to expand his business and build his visionary ballpark. He got together with his friends and business partners, Terry Fuller and Paul Hunter, to make the initial investment and build the ballpark. It was exciting when it finally opened. Paul Hunter was the official lawyer of the ballpark, while Terry really ran and operated the day-to-day. The ballpark opened on July 23, 1976. They launched an ad within the local gay magazine called Out Front. This is one of the first publications of its kind in the country, and they still operate today. There are very few remaining photos of the mysterious and notorious interior of the Ballpark Health Club, and the photos that I found were hidden in a discreetly labeled box of memoirs that you really had to know what you were looking for in order to find it. But luckily, we have a few first-hand descriptions that I'll read. One starts by saying, in a dilapidated building next to Kitty's South Porn Theater, through the ballpark's Grody Alley entrance, a black brick and scarred tin door with a small sign is next to the entrance that says, the ballpark. It does not appear inviting. You have to know that the ballpark exists in order to find it. It is a simple black door that doesn't face the street, it faces the alley. And when you walk through the door into a small vestibule, you're suddenly bathed in a red light. There's no question where you are now. A sign proclaims, this is a gay men's health club. What you find is pretty spectacular. Humid smells of sweat and chlorine. The front desk, a stack of white towels, rows of keys like an old hotel. The office wallpaper by iconic photos of naked men from magazines like Holt, Honcho, and Mandate. The larger-than-life chrome cutout ballpark logo, and a 30-foot waterfall. The waterfall was like a villa courtyard. The faux rock centerpiece of the ballpark rose 2 stories. One could stand in a shallow pool, warmly pummeled under its crashing cascade, soak in an adjoining dark cave, sweat in a steamy maze with foggy niches, view it from an encircling balcony, and there was an aquarium surrounded by 20 rooms and a semi-private bunk area. There was what was called the dinky dance floor, the DJ cave stuffed with bins and shelves of records, the incessant thump of disco music, columns of gay lockers, or gym lockers, and hallways of rooms galore. There was even a Mack truck cab, and in its bed it had a mattress and a carpeted banquette. On the top floor there was a library of vinyl for the DJs. A welded door in a shadowed corner once led to Kitty's South's balcony. The locker room had 200 lockers, tanning beds, a gaming area, and the latest in video sports. The fitness center had the latest set of universal fitness equipment. If you weren't interested in sports, there was also a large widescreen TV in the lounge. There were even 15 rooms with mirrors and hooks. All reports, guest comment cards, suggestion cards, and reviews state how immaculately clean they kept the place. And one important note, alcohol was not served at the ballpark. It was said to get that Mack truck into the building, it took 3 days, and they had to shut down 2 lanes on Broadway and remove a portion of the building. The ballpark was fondly named the Beep. Gay men and sometimes lesbians on ladies' nights found a uniquely fun, clean, and respectful respite from the world yelling out its judgments at them. You could be whoever you wanted to be at the ballpark, but not everyone lived happily ever after, and some lived no more. This was a time of fierce persecution of gays and lesbians, and being seen even coming out of an establishment like this would end careers, marriages, and even disassociations with parents and families. But to those who experienced the ballpark, it was a safe haven. Their staff of 20 considered the patrons as family, and they aimed to have everyone feel welcome at home and comfortable so that they can all enjoy the ballpark had to offer. In an article outlining the business model, Tom Woody shares that as a business idea, the ballpark may be unique, but as an idea, it is, as it has always been, a reflection of one of the most positive parts of being gay. This sense of shared growth and a common emergency is one which can continue, and perhaps one day may be a place of common thinking, he says. The ballpark celebrated their 5-year anniversary with a celebration of 14,000 members. 40% of them were out of town. They explained the out-of-town count by complimenting the ballpark's national reputation with 2 national gay magazines, Blue Boy and The Advocate, publishing stories on it. They created a community from within and had Wednesday night feature movie nights, a monthly newsletter with staff profiles sent to all members near and far, and a calendar. They also featured write-ups on local Broadway businesses. Their DJs even had their own following. Most of the DJs could only be found at the ballpark. And because their parties would run to 9 a.m., they had DJs that would control the mood, whether it was relaxing during the day to the thunderous sounds of discos in the late hours in the morning. They made everyone forget about the outside world and allowed themselves to be free. Tom Mills, about a year before he died, felt compelled to issue the music captured from the DJs because he felt that it belonged to the community. So in 1992, long after the ballpark closed, the folks at Pride Fest and the gay rodeo began selling the ballpark DJs music. The response was overwhelming because the music reminded everyone of the times that they felt safe, but also so many memories of friendship, camaraderie, and a place where they could truly be themselves. And during this time, the gay community was very much underground, but there were quite a few what they called pop and pop shops that were run throughout Denver. Most magazines were very hesitant to post anything talking about the gay lifestyle because they may lose their advertisers. So there really were only a few newspapers that could advertise. So they had to get creative. They did have sponsorships for local gay sponsored events. And so we were lucky enough to have a few of these brochures at the library. And you could see the gay owned business, or at least gay supported businesses on Broadway. There was Joe's Hair Affair at 129 Broadway, X-Rated Cakes at 360 Broadway. Paul Cutler owned the Sagittarius Man, which did stained glass and mirrors at 102 South Broadway. John Galt's Coffee House at 430 South Broadway offered a free cup of coffee if you mentioned the ad. The B-Way Cafe at 104 South Broadway offered Buddy's Burgers and Beer. And what I also love is that Art's Buds, which was a florist, had in his ad, "He will remember you for your style." There was Off-Broadway Deco and Kitsch at 102 South Broadway, and they noted that their location was across from the ballpark, which, as I mentioned before, you really had to know where the ballpark was and that it was actually called the ballpark to know where it was. So you could tell that they were really aiming the ad at a target audience. And here's a map that shows the gay bars on Broadway in the 1980s. This doesn't show the theaters or the bathhouses, but there look to be about 6 gay bars just south of Spear, which is really cool to see. And this map also shows some locations outside of Denver in Central City, Boulder, and Greeley, where gay men could find a safe place to hang out. The ballpark was more than just a place for late night entertainment. In the local volleyball team circus, they also sponsored the all-gay team. And it was noted that they were the only team in the circuit that actually had uniforms, and those uniforms were sponsored by the Ballpark Health Club. And it was noted that there was never any trouble between the teams once they found out that they were an all-gay team. The owners of the ballpark sought many opportunities to help their gay community. In 1977, an article notes that 2 local gay businesses were hoping to set a trend. At the coronation of the Gay Community Center, in which Paul Hunter was a co-founder and president for a number of years, the Ballpark Health Club donated $1,000, with an additional $1,000 coming from an anonymous donor from the ballpark's board of directors. And they also announced that for each dollar donated to the center at the first anniversary party, that the ballpark would donate 2 ballpark dollars. The other business was the haberdashery. In one of the ballpark's monthly newsletters, they said, "We are seeing both collectively and as individuals that our community is accelerating towards great change and very positive growth. It deserves our attention and demands your participation. We have written about our great promise for the future and about the new sense of community which is burgeoning forward in Denver and across the country. We discuss the importance of responding in positive ways to negative attacks against gay people. The results are becoming clear, and the rest of the city is beginning to notice. All over the country, politically gay people are now being heard. The approach is not a destructive emergency against the system, but pushing towards an expansion of the system. We are changing hearts not with proclamations and outrage, but with community magnetism and our sharing and communication. We are leading the way in society's understanding of what brotherhood really means. One comment card for the ballpark notes that there are people on this earth who are evolutionary mutations and who carry a new set of characteristics needed by evolution. These characteristics are inclusivity, an attraction for the future, and an innate sense of creative pattern, or God force, for which they are attuned themselves in order to create a positive future. That phrase captures the next 9 years at the ballpark. The LGBTQ plus community in Denver still felt like an underground movement, and many feared being outed if arrested by the police. Being outed in this manner often led to disownment by families and friends, or losing one's job or home. An undercover entrapment campaign became the catalyst for Denver's Stonewall. A bus known as the Johnny Cash Special was owned by a private citizen who took it around the country and rented it out to the police departments. It would be parked around the areas where gay men gathered. Plainclothes police officers would then entice men into the bus with the promise of seeing a Johnny Cash show. Once inside the bus, the police would do or say something that would lead to entrapment and arrest on obscenity charges. When the bus was full, the now trapped men would be taken to the station and booked on those various charges. Several lawyers, including Paul Hunter, sat in the clerk's office and reviewed every single arrest record for the individuals under those charges. They found 300 cases, and they found compelling evidence that the Solomon's Law, as well as the Denver Vice Squad, were targeting gays 99.1% of the time in those 300 arrests. This chart became known as the obscene slide because it showed the obscene and obvious discrimination that was happening. On the evening of October 23, 1973, members of the Gay Coalition of Denver, in which Paul Hunter was part of, and spoke at this, and more than 300 of their friends and allies packed into the evening's Denver City Council meeting. This is considered Denver's Stonewall. The goal of flooding City Council was to repeal 4 laws police were using as legal justifications for harassing the gay community. The council was at first apprehensive and limited the public speakers to 30 minutes. One by one, they started, and after the first speaker, the councilman was going to kick them all out and end the public session because of the cheers and applause. Then after 3 more speakers, including 2 attorneys, include Paul Hunter there, you could see his photo, the council began to see the arguments more clearly and realized the problem with these targeted attacks. Terry Magnan asked the council, how many men have spent time in a bar talking to a woman with the intent of trying to get her to go out with him or go home with him, or even kissed her right there in the bar? Everyone was silent. Have you ever seen a man and a woman dancing together? They replied, yes. Did you ever make any arrests? No answer. This confirmed for many the double standard in which Denver's gay men had been living for decades. 35 speakers gave 3 hours of testimony, and as a result, 4 laws, including loitering, cross-dressing, renting out rooms for purposes of sexual deviant purposes, and policies that enabled police entrapment through solicitation, were repealed. The court later ordered that police could not enforce criminal laws in a discriminatory manner against gays, nor could they make arrests for kissing, hugging, dancing, or holding hands. That night, for the first time, a group of LGBTQ plus individuals convinced the city to repeal laws that were being used to discriminate, and it put Denver and Colorado at the forefront of the movement for LGBTQ plus rights. Still, even after Denver's Stonewall, bathhouses were still a target from Denver's Vice Squad, as well as prejudiced individuals. There were multiple attacks at various times on the gay men heading to or from the bathhouse, including thefts and vandalism. Both the Ballpark Health Club and the Spartan Theater next door, which was previously the Weber Theater in the Royal Market Day, became the subject of heavy police inspections and walkthroughs. Denver Police Department would just be waiting outside gay bars, the Broadway especially, at at night to ticket and arrest men leaving the bars for small things like jaywalking at 2 a.m. when there was no traffic at all. The arrests were really about attaching stigma to the individuals, Steedman said. The ticket for jaywalking over the overnight in jail wasn't the penalty that was really impacting people. It was being outed. A note from the ballpark's daily business logs notes that they had seen a plainclothes officer come in and state, "We've had some problems with some of your customers." The ballpark team started to document any time they saw a vice squad entering. The excessive policing drove Paul Hunter crazy, and from this point he became Gay Denver's earliest advocates for fighting against police brutality and excessive arrests of gay men. In 1979, in the ballpark's historic lawsuit, they said that the inspections only came after gay activists came out in force against the re-election of Mayor William H. McNichols Jr. Famously, Mayor Pena won the race and became the first Latino mayor. Thanks to Paul and their legal team, the Ballpark Health Club first won a temporary restraining order against the Denver Police Department. A note in the ballpark's daily logs celebrates the first restraining order success. Paul then proceeded to win a permanent injunction barring entry into the ballpark without cause by any member of the Denver Police Department. It was an incredible win for their community. With the lawsuit protecting their community, the ballpark went private and sold memberships. At its peak, they had 18,000 members. Their parties were notorious, and one included the pool filled with men dancing to the point where it was close to overflowing. Before the night was over, a half-dozen rooms in the basement had to be evacuated due to the flooding. In 1978, California was set to vote on the Briggs Initiative, which was a law that would allow the filing of charges against any school teachers, aides, administrators, or counselors who were advocating, soliciting, imposing, encouraging, or promoting any public or private homosexual acts in any way that it can come to the attention of any students or staff. It also prohibited the hiring of any gay individuals. Notable activist and future San Francisco Mayor Harvey Milk helped lead the initiative. The Ballpark Health Club helped create the Coloradans Against Briggs, and the owners sent out letters and paid advertisements in newspapers to encourage folks to write their complaints to their lobbyist group. They would compile these letters and send them on. The Coloradans Against Briggs helped raise $5,891 to fight the initiative, and they all met at the Gay Community Center to watch the polls and hopefully celebrate. Luckily, the Briggs Initiative, also known as Proposition 6, was narrowly struck down with 58% of voters saying no. In the early 1980s, whispers of several diseases that were targeting the gay community began to circulate and became an epidemic. The whispers soon became hysteria. The ballpark provided a local stage, its owners playing their unwanted roles with urgency and integrity. In Denver, there was a rise of syphilis, and the city began encouraging free and confidential testing. The Ballpark Health Club and the Empire Bathhouse in Colfax responded to try to protect their friends by holding venereal disease testing clinics twice a month to help support their community and help to prevent the spread of the diseases. Bathhouses became an easy target for the Colorado Department of Health, waging a crusade over the testing. Underground secrets of the gay lifestyle stretched across newspapers and screeched over newscasts. Red ribbons and blue porch lights, symbols of AIDS awareness, seem quaint reminders of a terrifying time almost forgotten. One employee recalls why he liked working at the ballpark. He said, "Ballpark friends, coworkers, and customers supplied the camaraderie, fun, snort-inducing laughter, and love that lit up and gladdened that very dark period." Worried for their friends, the ballpark sent a note to its employees, encouraging them to buy health insurance so that they can hopefully be covered in case anything happens. They said that treatments are severely costly and will drain all savings quickly, and they wanted to be sure that they were covered. They offered to pay $56 a month, and the employee would pay the $15. Newspapers began to slander the ballpark, and Terry wrote to try and comfort the employees. In the meantime, our best response to both the police and them is to not let it bother us. Have a real hot party this weekend and let them know we are proud to be gay. In 1982, bathhouse owners educated their customers out of their own pockets, providing pamphlets, condoms, lubricants with Naloxone 9, now proven ineffective. They distributed tons of pamphlets on AIDS and updated it with the most current information. They began to promote safe sex and implemented measures inside their bathhouse. Their pamphlet became a model project throughout the country, and their pamphlet was then reprinted freely by other health departments and AIDS programs nationwide. The pamphlet even received praise from the gay liaison to the office of the mayor in Boston. The ballpark then announced that they are creating a network of local and national health officials to keep them informed and to look to them for updates, education, and educational material. The mayor's liaison to the Boston project sent a letter to the ballpark owners in October of 1984 after they saw the additional newsletters that the ballpark was putting out, and they said, "Your newsletters takes the positive approach of recommending alternative behaviors while also avoiding unnecessary guilt trips and anxieties. Your newsletter is a model of the kind of responsible communication that is needed, and you should be congratulated." During the Pride Parade in 1983, Terry Fuller was acknowledged for his efforts to help spread awareness for AIDS. He ran 2 large ads in the Outfront magazine talking about how he and the staff intended to help raise awareness about and to help fund and combat AIDS. In the parade, they passed out prints of those ads wrapped around 8 postcards that were addressed to Her Majesty, the President, the Governor, and our 5 Congresspeople, and also Margaret Heckler, the Secretary of Health and Human Resources. The note cards asked for their support for legislative action and funding for AIDS research and for the care of people with the disease. They asked anyone who would listen to express their concern to their elected representatives. Terry wrote, "Give as much as you can in money or time. Boycott ignorance and learn as much as you can about AIDS. Come out about your sexuality with everyone you can. Break down the barriers of prejudice by building bridges of honesty." The Ballpark Health Club became instrumental in supporting local and national AIDS funding efforts. Their fundraising contributed heavily to the first AIDS hotline in the country. They helped found and fund the Colorado AIDS Education and Research, which was run out of Denver Health and the National Jewish Center with a donation of $10,000. Terry Fuller is seen here presenting the check. They were also a leader in the education of gay men throughout Colorado at the time. One of the most impressive campaigns was the first that they sponsored to increase government awareness and funding for AIDS research through a massive mail and telegram campaign to our national legislators. In 2 years, they helped invest over $92,000 in support, which is close to $310,000 today, for education and practical means for safe sex. They worked with local state officials to help prevent sexually transmitted diseases with their on-site screenings. This in itself decreased the amount of local gay cases of sexually transmitted diseases. In 1983, the ballpark also fought fear by urging citizens to lobby President Reagan, Governor Richard Lamb, Senator Gary Hart, and Representative Pat Schroeder to vote for AIDS bills. And the 17,836 ballpark members sent a letter to Ronald Reagan urging them to act now and seek legislation to fund AIDS projects in research and support for those who have AIDS. After the success of the fundraising for AIDS research, but the slow sense of urgency by government officials to act on it, Paul Hunter and Terry Fuller and a group of community members decided to take matters into their own hands, and they banded together to help elect pro-LGBTQ plus officials, including former Denver Mayor Federico Pena. Once elected, Pena appointed Paul Hunter and his friends to key committees and boards within the government. Deep in the Denver Library, there's a little box that has this treasure trove of lost history. One of the artifacts was a letter to Terry Fuller from Mayor Pena, thanking him for his generous contribution and support. He said that his assistance was instrumental in his victories at the polls, and he looked forward to working with him to realize their goals for the future of Denver. Under Mayor Pena, Paul Hunter also served on the Board of Health and Hospitals. They helped guide public health officials during the earliest days of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. The question was, how do you treat those living with AIDS? Everyone was frightened, but they worked hard to make sure that there was adequate care. In 1983, amidst the atmosphere of unrelenting grief and fear, a group of activists met in Denver as part of the Gay and Lesbian Health Conference. Among them, a dozen men with AIDS. As the conference drew to a close, the activists asked to address the attendees. They presented this banner shown. Rather than having a report presented about the state of the AIDS crisis, they wanted to speak for themselves. If the word empowerment hadn't been a part of the healthcare lexicon yet, it was about to be. It would be known as the Denver Principles. And it began like this. We condemn attempts to label us as victims, which implies defeat, and we are only occasionally patients, which implies passivity, helplessness, and dependence upon the care of others. We are people with AIDS. They then outlined 17 principles that covered everything from healthcare decisions to civil rights to sexual conduct. They demanded that physicians see their patients as whole people and provide accurate information. They believed their opinion on their care should be awarded equal weight, and this idea was revolutionary. This specifically outlined the rights to quality medical treatment and quality social service provision without discrimination of any form, including sexual orientation, gender, diagnosis, economic status, or race. Also, the right to full explanations of all medical procedures and risks, to choose or refuse their treatment modalities, to refuse to participate in research without jeopardizing their treatment, and to make informed decisions about their lives. Also, the right to privacy, to confidentiality of medical records, to human respect, and to choose who their significant others are. And lastly, the right to die and to live in dignity. And their impact on all of us is so obvious today that it can be easily taken for granted. So the next time you go to the doctor and they consult you about a change in medication or whether a diagnostic test may be required, you can thank the Denver Principles. On December 9th, 1983, Mayor Pena created a proclamation saying that there shall not be any discrimination by any agency, department, commission, board, or other official entity on the basis of race, religion, national origin, age, sex, disability, or sexual preference in any manner of hiring, employment, housing, credit, contracting provisions of services, or any other matter whatsoever. In the ballpark, in sticking to their ethos of their coalition, once they received these anti-discrimination victories, they still went out and celebrated with love, advocacy, and community engagement to help build a better tomorrow. Paul went back to work quickly and worked with the city agencies for human rights and community relations. He also worked with Jerry Garash on training with the police academy on how to handle situations in the gay community. The Denver Police Department has also undergone changes as a result of the Gay Coalition of Denver and Jerry Garash's activism. The Denver Police Department at the time, was only one of 3 agencies in the country and the only one in Colorado to be certified by Out to Protect, which was an organization committed to creating greater awareness and support for LGBTQ plus professionals working on or pursuing a career in law enforcement. At the time, the DPT was also one of the very few agencies with dedicated bias-motivated crime detectives. This article from 1986 shows great strides in repairing the damage that the police had done in the past. They had convinced the Denver police force to join the gay games to play the Denver police in a basketball game to support the police Special Olympics. Paul Hunter and his friend Joe Barrows fought and won the opening of an anonymous testing site, which was a really big accomplishment. And just as they celebrated that, the Denver City Council passed an equal gay and lesbian inclusive equal protection ordinance, and almost immediately a group of anti-gay citizens attempted to overturn it. It wasn't a cheap fight, and Barrows became a fundraiser for it. Barrows stepped up to the plate again when funds were needed to stop the statewide initiative to outlaw gay rights. And he stepped up again when it passed and a legal challenge was needed. But eventually the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Amendment 2 unconstitutional in 1996. So we're going to do a little flashback to World War II, when Capitol Hill became the center of Denver's gay and lesbian community. The mixed-use built environment proved amenable to non-traditional households and families. But as same-gender households tried to move to surrounding neighborhoods, they found that neighbors were more than willing to use zoning laws against them. Denver's historic R0 zoning between the 1950s and 1980s was a highly restrictive, discriminatory policy used to maintain segregated single-family neighborhoods by prohibiting non-traditional families, renters, and minority groups. It defined families strictly by blood or marriage, limiting unrelated residents, effectively acting as a tool to exclude populations and keep neighborhoods white, like in Park Hill and Capitol Hill. The residents of neighborhoods zoned R0 used the zoning code for their own needs. Fighting the R0 zoning became a priority for the city's queer community in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but reforms did not happen until R0 zoning became seen as an issue affecting unmarried heterosexual couples. Paul Hunter was instrumental in overturning Denver's R0 discriminatory zoning law. And now the areas of Capitol Hill, Cheesman Park, and City Park West are identified unofficially as Denver's first gay cultural district, called Lavender Hill. And there's hopes in the coming years of earning official city recognition. In 1984, terror, judgment, suspicion, and ignorance reigned supreme. For many, it felt like the end of the world, and for some it was. Because of the AIDS epidemic, those who caught HIV didn't get to choose when they came out of the closet. Their secret was forced out. However, many felt like these bathhouses were one of the only places that they felt safe, loved, acknowledged, and seen. For many, closing the bathhouses was considered a non-negotiable regression to be invisible again and hide who they are. These discussions ignited destructive riots in San Francisco and angry demonstrations in New York, and even a few nationwide protests. Tom Mills refused to close down and have his dream ruined, and he responded by moving to Washington, D.C. to try to start another ballpark as part of a new chain of bathhouses. But in 1985, there was an even greater crackdown of the establishments by the Vice Squad plainclothes officers, who would flirt or make advances on patrons, and then once they reciprocated, they would be arrested. The lawsuits said that they would come in 2 or 3 days a week and arrest sometimes up to 4 people each time. Because of these arrests, the number of crimes associated with those businesses rose. And now the city considered these businesses a major issue and enforced the crackdowns. This resulted in the shutdown of the Empress Theater and 1039 Broadway. The city says that the crackdown was a result of the area being identified as a neighborhood business revitalization district, not a targeted attack. They said it was because the Broadway Plaza Business District said that they wanted the area cleaned up. In October 1985, 2 years after they sent the ballpark members' letter to President Reagan, Congress passed the AIDS appropriation bill that granted almost $2 million towards AIDS research. However, it did come with some awful caveats, including 1, making it a felony for persons in high-risk groups for AIDS to donate blood, 2, prohibiting school children with AIDS from attending school, 3, stopping persons with AIDS from working in the healthcare industry, and 4, cutting off federal funding for those cities in which they do not act to close down the bathhouses. The bathhouse owners argued that it would be better to keep them open because otherwise these folks will find their gratification somewhere else. Their pamphlets were spreading awareness, and that at least when they are coming to the bathhouses, that they can educate people and offer protection. Where else could they get a critical mass of people if the very few establishments that they are allowed to gather in close? They noted that attendance was down, but it still hovers around 8,000 to 10,000 people per month. The owners struggled heavily, though, knowing that their establishment was likely contributing to the transmission of AIDS, and it was keeping them up at night. The owners spent so much time advocating to AIDS research, raising money, and putting in place safety nets and protections to keep their gay community safe. They acted like it was their responsibility, and the ballpark was the vessel to really make a difference and to make that happen. Under enormous pressure from all sides, ballpark owners played their public parts courageously, but privately, they too were tragically affected by the plague, losing many friends, their own HIV negative statuses, and their lives. A few personal letters discuss this weight. One is a holiday card, but it says, "It is a difficult time for us all. So many friends sick or gone with no end in sight. John and Ken were especially tough. The pain was also tearing the Ballpark family apart. Another letter says, Doug is having a tough time with Chuck's death, and there's no end in sight. Haven't seen Terry since the summer. There's a strain between us. I regret that, but that's him. Paul celebrated in that letter that they were able to get the anonymous testing pilot program launched, and they changed the discriminatory R0 zoning policy. One employee recalls, I have only an inkling of how they weighed their culpability and grappled with their consequences. I know what mental and emotional issues I wrestled, but I can't imagine theirs as accused proprietors of a business of death. Ultimately, the owners decided to close the ballpark. The reason was not because they caved into the health department or public opinion, the epidemic, or that business was hurting. The truth, it was a slumlord dispute. The owner, Norman Handler, as I mentioned from earlier in the presentation, forced the ballpark owners to spend $100,000 on improvements to the old Weber Theater that were required by the city. The improvements were not even relating to the health club. It made it impossible for them to renew the lease. They knew eventually the city was going to condemn the building without the repairs, and Norm even was trying to force the owners to buy the building for the equivalent of $3 million today, even with the need for a whole new roof structure. Secretly, the owners, though, were greatly relieved. They were tired. Tom Mills recalled that there were three major factors. They were in and out of lawsuits with the owner since it opened, and they realized that the band would rather spend money on a lawsuit than his own building. The building's structure was in bad need of repair, and they went back and forth trying to force him to live up to the requirements of his lease to maintain the buildings. And three, AIDS, and the guilt that they may have been the cause that killed so many of their friends. Tom said that when people die young, they become legends, and they felt maybe that is what would happen to the ballpark. From its opening to its closing after 9 years, 10 months, and 25 days, 100,000 different men passed through the doors, and there were a total of 956,000 admissions. Depression set in for the employees and many in the gay community. Many cheered, many could not care less. To their credit, the trio resolved to go out with a 3-day blowout, heads held high. Before the demolition, they would hold one last epic party, and on June 16th, 1986, the fairy tale ended. The farewell would epitomize the reputation of the ballpark parties. Classy creations superbly executed by its talented staff. Theme, invitations, decor, light show, food display, music. Several of their prominent DJs were scheduled for the party, but most ended up canceling because they were too distraught to lose the ballpark. Guests flew in from all over the country, and the line snaked around the block to have one last party at the ballpark. Rick Kitzman was the DJ who played the last song at the ballpark. He recalls, that night, he recorded 10 and a half hours, a musical record to record that magical night. In his own words, the last song at the ballpark had to say something. He frantically flipped through the albums in the cage and spotted I Am What I Am from La Cage aux Folles. It would have to do. As the drag queen Albin sings on, the closing of the ballpark was all about not hiding, not living a sham, and not making apologies. I faded the volume dials to zeros, shut off the turntables and mixing board, heard the telltale speaker pops, all for the last time. My ears rang. The waterfall continued its loud and decorous pour. Around 9 a.m. Monday morning, after playing 30-plus hours of a 72-hour nonstop party, I had played the last song at the ballpark, 1 month shy of its 10th anniversary. The achievement is one of my life's highest and lowest moments, proud and bittersweet, joyful and heartbreaking. Because life goes on, I gazed at the disheartened detritus of partiers. The cleanup crew beginning their final chores. I chatted with teary Tom Whitty, then editor of the Denver's defunct gay magazine Quest, and an eventual AIDS casualty. He says nothing will be the same. And we knew a single second of time had draped its pall over us. Before it, life was known. After it, life would be fearfully unknowable. There was a large public garage sale, and the public descended on it like rabid scavengers, eager for a piece of the ballpark, like a notepad, classic erotic poster, or a numbered door as a remembrance of what happened behind it. Rick continues his recollection. The last weekend party was a talked about triumph and a bizarre incongruity because dismantling the ballpark followed immediately. After recuperating for 2 days, I returned and stood stunned among the ruins, a wreck wrought by saws and sledgehammers. Tom knew the slumlord planned to reopen his bathhouse under a new name. Rather than let the slumlord steal his baby, Tom deliberately demolished the interior and even poured cement down the drains. Halls were crammed with ripped up carpets and floorboards, stacks of mattresses and doors. The jacuzzi and exotic fish tank sat empty. The maze, unnaturally dry and bright, smelled dusty. Torn asunder, the DJ booth reflected my heart. The ballpark truly was no more. At the smashed remains of the front desk, I sat alone with Tom, pensive and wiped out. Disconcertingly, he burst into tears. Now guilt overwhelmed him. Had he been responsible for spreading death to hundreds, maybe thousands? I tried to comfort Tom by saying he had also spread incredible joy that nobody knew this disease would happen, that when no one else responded to that mortal mystery, the ballpark did. Terry left one last employee memo to his team. We didn't plan it this way, perhaps, but perhaps the gods were writing a higher ending to this incredible adventure called Flesh. Whichever, I am proud to have been a small part of it and hope you are too. I give my thanks, along with my hopes, for many more of these experiences which take us higher. Today the world, tomorrow the universe? Why not? Wherever. I'll be there, and I hope you will be too. I love you all, Terry. Years later, in August 1997, due to the derelict building, the landlord was forced to tear down the building that had now become a Baker neighborhood eyesore. People describe mangled iron and mounds of crumbling bricks. Gone were the mission-style pediments, corner turrets, and shingle-penned roofs. Now it is a flat and forlorn patch with no memory of what was once there. Terry made a great quote outlining the optimism, the determination, and the promise that they made to their patrons. When you're fighting for your life, you better know who your friends are. We promise to be leaders in providing a better understanding of safe sex, to present the most up-to-date and honest information available regarding the AIDS crisis. There are some who will mistake our motives and speak against us. Together, we will win. The LGBTQ+ community has won much since 1983, and the ballpark's contribution isn't an inflated claim. The ballpark's legacy? Consider today's healthcare. There's notifications from insurance companies about the confidentiality of medical records, and government agencies on all levels that offer medical and social services for HIV patients. Hospitals and healthcare professionals who no longer treat the affected like pariahs. The abundance of medicine, information, and health guidelines for AIDS. Support groups fighting stigma. Standard protocols now used no matter what the disease. Billions of dollars from charities, governments, and pharmaceuticals to research a cure. AIDS crisis lines and informational lines available to all who need them. They also helped change the overall outlook of Denver and removed the following anti-discriminatory laws and zoning. Denver's discriminatory R0 zoning law, the anti-gay laws for loitering for sexual deviant purposes, which was used to arrest gay men in public spaces, the anti-cross-dressing law, which targeted transgender individuals and those violating gender norms, the lewd act and behavior law, broadly enforced against same-sex couples for affection, renting a room for sexually deviant purposes, which targeted hotels and individuals. They helped bring training to the Denver police force to better handle gay-related issues while in the field. And they founded the Gay Coalition of Denver and the Gay Community Center of Denver. And there's probably some other items that I'm missing or have been lost to history. 40 years ago, none of this existed until the ballpark owners and several grassroots activists created nationwide support and raised a shattering ruckus to bring about these changes. In 1993, the Paul Hunter Award was conceived after Paul died in 1991 of AIDS. Paul's legacy of 20 years of service to the LGBTQ+ community in Colorado has continued with the yearly recognition of individuals who exemplified his dedication to a safe and just community for all individuals, regardless of race, creed, gender, age, or sexual orientation. He was an advocate for over 20 years, not for his own ego, but for justice and equality. In his obituary, they said that it was Paul Hunter's work and contributions that significantly improved the complexion of the Denver metro area in acceptance of the gay lifestyle. He worked tirelessly and patiently on the Equal Protections Ordinance, and to many gays and lesbians, he was like the Martin Luther King Jr. of gay rights. In 2006, Terry Fuller, HIV positive for decades, died vacationing in Mexico from a freak accident, not AIDS. Terry went on after the ballpark to lead several other important gay establishments like Trax. Tom Mills died of AIDS in 1993. Rick Kitzman, the last DJ to play at the ballpark and an HIV survivor, provided a memorial. Due in part to the ballpark's enduring legacy, I and countless others live, maybe not happily ever after, but we live. Beginning my own legacy, I take a spark of my rage and a light of a torch of love, shining it in tribute for Tom, Paul, Terry, and all the boys who laid down their sparks of life long ago. I am so grateful to them for living then, for living now, for the privilege of playing the last song at the ballpark. Thank you for listening, and I hope that when you walk by this forgotten little dirt patch in the middle of Broadway, that you'll remember the story of the ballpark and understand how much they have impacted our lives today. Thank you. I'm gonna cry.
That was beautiful. Well done.
It's crazy.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Brittany, for sharing. Just another piece to add to this, because I'm actually quite the queer history buff myself. I used to teach courses about this back in the day for fun, just like as a hobby. And I didn't know a lot of this. I live a block away from former ballpark and didn't know all of this. So I'm very touched, and it's particularly poignant right now because you referenced that this was the stone wall of Denver, whereas the actual Stonewall Monument was just ordered this week to lower and remove their gay flags, which has been seen as a real slap in the face for queer history and just the queer community in general, because it's the most important queer event in the United States. Just it symbol shows that the fight is ongoing. It's important to continue to learn our history so we don't repeat the past. And while these issues aren't going away, it's like these important community leaders that are making a difference. And I'm really walking away from this presentation feeling more positive and like galvanized to make a difference locally or just like help spread this information. So I'm very thankful for this presentation, and I can't wait to come next month.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to thank you as well because you did a tremendous job of finding some information here, which I had only found the article in Out Front that celebrated the end of the ballpark, which you quoted from some, and I didn't realize that the library had apparently a trove of memoirs or mementos from I guess from one or more of the people who were at the ballpark. I wanted to add just a few things I know and make an offer. I know at least one person in Baker who, along with his mother, had run an informal hospice for men dying of AIDS. And I think there were more than that, but I don't know the deep history. And while I'm working kind of gradually on an expansive history of Baker, I haven't found the in-depth resources for the gay history of Baker, which I think is a big history. And I've been kind of planning to try to do more on that. I have there's a few friends I've got that I could ask, but Chris, since you mentioned you've been teaching, I don't know if you have some resources, and I'm not quite just a little more than a block away, so we're neighbors. I'm at Archer and Bannock, so Anyway, so I'd love to find some resources that I could compile into my history, um, respectfully, and I know that there's quite a bigger history of in Baker of well, the first round of gentrification of Baker in one, not necessarily the first round, but the most significant late 20th century round was probably starting in the 70s and really got going in the 80s, and a substantial portion of it is informally attributed to gay men buying houses and fixing them up. And I know some of them, and they talk about it sometimes, but I haven't tried to dig it out. Maybe somebody has written a history of that already, and I'd love to know about it if they have, because it really deserves to be recorded. And this here can be a part of it as well. I'm glad that some of this is at the library, as you found. So that's just what I wanted to share.
And what was hard, so I mentioned kind of before everyone got on, I just casually researched a little of this, and there was a really amazing article by Rick Kitzman
Yeah.
called On the Wings of Fairies, and it
Hmm.
described a lot of this that I was talking about in the ballpark. And so when I went back to try and find those articles, every single thing he wrote has been wiped from the internet. And so I had to actually like do the Wayback Machine and like try and find it. And only because he wrote his actual name on that article was I able to find, because I was searching Rick Kitzman, Rick Kitz, like where is he? Like I need these articles that that's where all of this history is under his files. And so
Okay.
it's there, it's beautiful. They have like three different logs from various times of when they're at the ballpark. And it's sometimes silly things like, well, one of the freezers broke today, or that dang heater in the hot tub isn't working again. And then it's like some really incredible moments, captured in there. Um, but this little lot, I mean, I always walked by and I was like, why doesn't someone build on that? And now when I'm looking at it again, and I'm even just seeing on Google Earth, it feels to me whoever owns this lot right now may actually know the significance of it. And that's why they're not doing anything on it. And so I wish I had so much time in the world, and maybe someone wants to volunteer for this, but there are grants out there from History Colorado uh, to do work. And so one of my thoughts was I wanted to make a plaque and like dig up the concrete in front of it, not put it on the property for, any rights, but in front of it, put a plaque there acknowledging their efforts, and then also, the lives lost. But then I also thought, couldn't we do like just spread all this history and their accomplishments on like big vinyl banners on the fence? But then I was like, some jerk who's gonna come through and like spray paint it. So I've been trying to picture all these different ways. Like maybe we can get permission to like mount it 1 foot behind the fences so they can't spray paint it, stuff like that. But I'd really like to see some sort of memorial there, because I do truly, truly think this might be the most historically significant site in all of our neighborhood.
I agree. It deserves it's the kind of thing that deserves commemoration. And uh, I do know who owns it. I believe it was the people who bought the Weber Theater and renovated it. They've sold the Weber Theater, but it's not exactly the same group. It's an LLC that's associated with the people who originally renovated the Weber Theater and turned it into a distillery for a while. I don't know that they know the history, so I could be wrong, but yeah, maybe they have some idea, but I think they've just been desperate to find find a buyer for it. Maybe they're asking too much, or maybe it's there. Buyers are waiting for Broadway's revival or something like that. I don't know.
Feel free to pass this video on to them.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna I'm gonna be picking through it for details, and maybe just going down to the library and finding that box or boxes that you found, because I had wanted to be more specific about this particular building, and there actually are at a certain point, there was a lot of repression, and there's a certain point gay enterprise on Broadway became very public. I've found that in Out Front, no, not in Out Front. There some older magazines. There are some older magazines that are archived and easy to find, and so I've been wanting to kind of document that as a piece of the gay history of Baker. And I'm not going to try to do something comprehensive. I'm hoping somebody has that idea though, because I think there's a lot there.
So, for my work, I do social media and video production for a living. And
Hmm.
Brittany, with your permission or anything, I think this could be a great series of short videos that could be
Hmm.
educational. Don't want to lift your hard work and research, but I think with some fun graphics and voiceover work that they could play well to viral audiences. So,
Hmm.
not that I want to sign myself up for free labor, but I've actually toyed around with, like I said, since this is a hobby of mine, doing informational content on my Instagram and whatnot. So I think that these are the types of stories that, as the Broadway is doing the general improvement district and will be working on branding and placemaking and whatnot, that there's opportunity to take this momentum, and whether it's a plaque or a symbol or something, but I think that this is really significant.
we may have to conspire. So I'm just gonna do a little plug because that it's part of my grand campaign. So we're trying to get a museum built. If you guys know where um the abandoned house when you get off of the exit onto Lincoln Street, the big purple and yellow Victorian. So we're moving very fast to try and make that a museum. And we have to raise $1 million. And it's going to be featuring a lot of these untold stories. Like Steve's presentation last month about everyone said that white people found the gold when actually it was a Mexican settlement or traders. Like telling those stories, I want to heavily feature the Ballpark Health Club in this. I even have an idea of making as part of the exhibit. I want to create like a big heart where people can actually drop in their memories and their memorial as part of it to create
Hmm.
kind of like a living history. And so, in order to try and help raise money for this museum, because there's no grants and we need $1 million, I thought maybe we could become famous on social media. So, exactly what you're talking about, Chris, is, and I've been trying to figure out how to do digital content. So, the one I did on the Lincoln Street, that was my first try and figure out. But um, I want to try to use it as a platform to, number one, bring awareness to the museum so we can raise money, but then also to start to bring these stories alive. Because one of the things I found when I talk about building this museum is people are like, what would you put in there? Aren't there museums downtown? I'm like, there's so much down here that's just been totally erased that we've got to retell this story and whatnot. So let's conspire. But
I would love
the
to conspire.
but I'm gonna have the this recording and whatnot up on the site too. So, anybody can share, classrooms with friends. Like I really, really want people to know this. Does anybody else have questions or thoughts?
I really loved it. I think everyone's kind of said great things and I ditto all of that, but it makes me really proud of the South Broadway area. So I don't know. I'm just who knew that lot had so much history? That's pretty amazing. I had no idea. So thanks for enlightening me.
Welcome. And when you read about it, like in Bill Goodstein's books, they talk about it, the ballpark from and that block from an outsider's perspective. And so that's kind of the story I was thinking was it was just like a dingy dive bar and like this notorious, nuisance, right? And so that's and that's kind of what my expectation was when I first started researching. And then I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Oh,
Amazing. Well,
cool.
thank you so much, Brittany. It was just perfect. Beautiful.
Thank you. And I can't remember what we're doing next month for History Club. Carol and Diana is going to present on that one, but just keep following the Lincoln Street account. Usually we post it there, or I try and put it on Nextdoor. Just, anyone who's interested. But thank you for joining, and I hope you guys have a good week.
Thanks again. Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Chat soon.
Have a great night.